Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this last event before Christmas, before the end of the year. And it's welcome to this discussion on the EU AI Act. As you see from the participation, this is a hot topic. It's just decided and agreed in the trilogue. And we are looking forward to hear by the two speakers how the AI Act looks like now and what happened also in the background on the political level, something behind the scene. Before going further, I would like to remind you that also we, the Digital Humanism Initiative, did its share. So we also published a support statement, which was signed by quite a number of persons supporting, let's say, the approach of the European Parliament. And I think it would also help at least a little bit so that the act passed. I'm happy to welcome two outstanding experts in the field. It's George Mitakides and Zenner. Before introducing the two panelists, short choreography of today. So we have the two, let's say, presentations or talk, each of them 10 to 15 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes. We will start with Kai. He will talk more what was achieved, how the AI looked like now, what are the details. And then we have George with a few, let's say, on the political background and also what's to be expected, what next and what could be also next steps by an initiative like ours. And after that, this, let's say, 40 minutes or 30 minutes, we have Q&A, which this time will be moderated by me. Today, the music comes from Erich, and it will be by Erich Brehm, and it will be explained before we start at the end with the short piece of music. Introducing the two panelists, I start with the first speaker, Zenner. He is from the European Parliament. He is head of office, and he is digital policy advisor for the Member of Parliament, Axel Voss from Germany. Before that, he was with the Konrad Adenauer Foundations in Brussels. His background is in politics and law. Also, he's now also an expert in ICT, I have to say, reading his papers. He is specialized in security studies, foreign policy, and also European law. He studied at several universities like the University of Bremen, the University of Freiburg, York, Münster, and also at the University of Edinburgh, which is somehow a center of logic, mathematical logic in Europe. And he contributed some very insightful papers and contributions on the European AI Act, and it's worth reading his contributions on that topic. The second speaker is George Mitakides. I really introduce him now, even if we all know him, but short to tell maybe those who are here for the first time. George has a PhD in mathematical logic and computer science. He studied in the US Cornell. And after that, he worked at MIT, Cornell, and Rochester University. Then he turned back to Greece, where he was at the chair of logic at the University of Patras. And then he moved to the European Commission with a very high level responsibility in research and development policy in ICT. In some sense, he is the father of the ESPRIT program, which was the first ICT program, research program in Europe. And he also further developed afterwards the ISD program. In that role, he also was very important for the establishment of for international institutions. For example, you all know the World Wide Web Consortia. And one can say without George, the World Wide Web Consortia would not exist, at least as it looks now. He has a number of awards and honorary degrees. I don't want to mention them all. And he has different positions at several universities. Most important, he's with us since the early beginning. One can say he's a digital humanist. And besides that, he is also a very good friend of us. So thank you both of us for being with us. And I hand over now to Zenner for his 15 to 20 minutes. If there are questions just for understanding, maybe one or two. If not, then we continue with George, and at the end we have Q&A. Kai.
Yes, for the invitation. Today is my second day of holidays, but yeah, I found the concept behind the series very interesting, and as you saw in the last month, for Axel Voss, my boss, and for myself, the AI Act is connected to a lot of yeah, publicity activities, because we really care about this law and are really caring to better explain some of the European Union had, but also the European Parliament developed over the last weeks, months, and actually even years. Maybe I will start with something connected to what I just said, a general assessment. Because Axel and I, we are currently still not 100% sure how to assess the final political agreement on the AI Act. Because on the one hand, Parliament and also ourselves, we, I think, put a mark in the EU AI Act. But on the other hand, we are both perfectionists, and to see that many of the good ideas that the European Parliament had didn't make it in the final version also, yeah, makes us a bit sad, or sometimes even yeah, a bit angry and worried when we are thinking about maybe just a few procedural points. Now, what is happening is that as soon as the European Parliament and Commission and Council are reassessing after the winter break, we will continue to do technical meetings. We will finalize the recitals. So all those over 95 recitals that are specifying the operative text, the articles of the AI Act. And by doing that, also specify what is meant with prohibitions that you can find in Article 5. For example, if certain AI technologies that would fall under a prohibition are exceptionally not in the scope of this prohibition because they are rather useful for our society, and so on. So by saying that, I want to indicate that the battle on the AI Act is really not over yet, because also impact. After we finish the negotiations on technical level, which needs to be done at latest on the 9th of February, the voting in the parliament, so in committee, but then plenary, but also in the council, in the COREPER, and also in the ministry level, will take place from, let's say, February to April. And then also the lawyer linguist and legal service, and also the translation into those 24 official language of the European Union will take place. And then if everything works, of all those steps I outlined now, the AI Act will enter into force with the publication in the official EU journal, probably in May or June next year. After that, we will have a lot to do within the Commission, but also with cities, because they need to prepare quite a lot, starting from guidelines, but also hiring a lot of experts, for example, on foundation models that they will need if they want to govern and enforce the AI Act. And of course, we have also the technical standards that are currently being developed at Senelec in Germany, at the DIN Institute, and so on. And yeah, hopefully all of that is ready when the AI Act becomes applicable, which will be different stages of time. When it comes to prohibitions, the AI Act becomes already applicable 6 months after entering into force. so probably at the end of next year. Foundation models, the chapter will become applicable after 12 months. The transition period for Annex 2, so the sectors, will become applicable after 36 months, and everything else after 2 years. So again, especially, and let's say summer 2026, probably most parts of the AI Act become applicable. And then we will really see if what we now agreed on is doable, is enforceable, is implementable for companies. I said already at the beginning that Axel and myself are currently not completely sure if the AI Act is really a big step forward, harmful, at least to or in some extent. Maybe to elaborate on that a little bit more. I would start with a general assessment of this legislative piece that we conceptually didn't like the European AI Act from the beginning, and this not only Axel and I, but the whole legal committee of the European Parliament had a complete different vision at the very beginning of the AI policy discussion. What we, the Social Democrats, the Greens, the Liberals, and all other political groups in the legal committee had envisioned was more like the US system, have an EU, let's say, bills of rights or ethical guidelines that are applicable for every high-risk system, not only high-risk AI systems, but maybe not in every detail enforceable, and that this are then kind of translated down in the different sectors. So, for example, that there are adjustments of legislation in the medical sector, in the creative sector, media sector, and so on and so on. And then this whole let's say mechanism would be complemented by new liability laws. The Commission, of course, had a complete different approach. They had the AI Act with rules that are applicable in the same or to the same extent for every sector, for every use case. And again, this was something that especially the legal committee never really liked. And what we saw in the negotiations on the AI Act, as we predicted, that this horizontal approach is leading to a lot of problems because let's take human oversight, Article 14, or Article anti-discriminatory data set, and so on. Those principles do make a lot of sense for most of the existing AI systems, but in some cases, for example, human oversight or human intervention in ongoing AI operations could be even harmful. One example is in eye surgery by an almost autonomous surgery robot developed by Philips, where a human intervention is leading the number of accidents is skyrocketing because the robot is already so advanced and so much better than a human doctor that, again, human oversight in this case would be even more harmful than beneficial. And this, again, you can now talk about in a lot of different areas, which is why in the final AI Act, we now rewrote it a little bit and underlined that all those high-risk obligations take into account the intended purpose, the context of use, harmonized standards, and so on, which again mitigates this conceptual problem that the proposal of the Commission created. But on the other hand, it leads now to a different problem that even though you have now horizontal rules for all high-risk AI systems, there will be a lot of different ways to implement high-risk obligations. Guidelines of the Commission for all those different sectors and use cases are extremely important. And also, what is very important is our harmonized standards. And there again, we will have horizontal harmonized standards, but we will also have vertical harmonized standards. Currently, and Panelists are just working on the horizontal standards, but we still let's say vertical standards or sectorial standards in order to make the whole system work. Another point where the parliament had a very, very different vision than the commission and also even more the member states was the enforcement. Again, a cross-party assessment of digital policy right now is that even though the GDPR differently among political groups, everyone shares the assessment that when it comes to enforcement, the lack of centralization in the European Union in the internal market, digital internal market, is one of the biggest issues or obstacles when it comes to proper enforcement of European data protection laws. What we as European Parliament therefore demanded for the AI Act was a much stronger centralization. People in the parliament even wanted a kind of AI and data agency that is in the future enforcing everything across the European Union to the same extent, or at least strongly coordinating the national competent authorities and kind of streamlining their activities, their interpretations, their approaches, and so on. Unfortunately, also here, the parliament did manage to get their will. We will now have a European Commission that is coordinating. We will have an AI board that is providing a kind of platform for national competent authorities to have an exchange, to share best practices, and so on and so on. But our huge worry is that even though it's not completely comparable because the AI Act is based on a product safety legislation approach, that nevertheless we will see similar problems, issues that, for example, the Irish national competent authorities is maybe lacking activities against certain large digital corporations, that we have again different understandings from bias in Article 10 when it comes to Hungary, when it comes to Netherlands, that comes to on something that could have been avoided if the proposals of the European Parliament would have been taken more into account. And maybe a third point, where again, Axel and I, but I think also other players in the European Parliament are currently not completely sure if we should celebrate or not, are foundation models, generative AI or general purpose AI models, how it's called now. As you probably heard, there was pushback from US big tech companies, but also from several other larger European companies against the idea of regulating the model sector, model level in the AI value chain. We in the European Parliament thought from the beginning that without regulating this level, it will become rather impossible for so-called downstream companies to become compliant with the AI Act, because in most cases they are building their high-risk AI system on top of a foundation model general purpose AI system like GPT-4 or ChatGPT. If this model or the system are not at least somehow in line already with the AI Act, it will become impossible or at least rather expensive to align them. And if those companies that are developing those upstream models and systems are not enough information with downstream companies like Siemens or SAP or Bosch or whatever, those companies again lack the information in order to create and design an AI Act compliant high risk AI system. What we have now in the text is the result of a strong pushback by certain member states like France, Germany, and others, meaning that many ideas from the parliament area didn't make it, and also that the text is rather vague when it comes to GPI models. This again leads to a risk that once this part of the AI Act is enforced or becomes applicable, maybe certain procedures, for example, the procedure of how to become designated as a so-called systemic, likely, for example, OpenAI's GPT-4 would fall under this category. Because of those flaws that we see in the text, it will become rather likely that a company like OpenAI is going in front of a court against the designation, or is challenging certain obligations that they need to fill, and a lot of other things. Meaning, all those points that I was the conceptual problems that we see, the enforcement obstacles, the lack of streamlining and centralizing, but also the vague text, not only in the foundation model chapter, but also in other chapters, which is all being based on this rush to finalize the AI Act at the very end of the year in order to still make it in front of the European election, could lead to problems that is becoming implementable. So once it's getting applicable. Again, we hope that the concerns, I'm almost finished, we hope that the concerns that Axel and I have are in the end meaningless, that they are not true and correct. But those concerns are the reason why we are currently not really sure if we should celebrate or not. Maybe we are just a little bit too close at AI Act, and both tend to be perfectionists, and therefore maybe we are a bit too critical. But yeah, as a summary, I wanted to give you this kind of middle-based assessment. With that, I would stop and look forward to the discussion.
Muted. Hannes, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Kai. Is there any urgent, rather technical, formal question to Kai? If not, I would hand over to George for his 15 to 20 minutes to open then for the Q&A. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Hannes. I will try to share my screen if I can do it successfully. Which I cannot.
It works.
It works.
Yeah, perfect.
Miracolo. It works better than when we tried it before the thing began. So let me first just say something that I cannot resist. The AI Act is imperfect. It's a result of negotiations and compromise. And so was the GDPR, so was the DMA, so was the DSA. But it's a very important decision, and it is a success that it was adopted. And there's a long way ahead, but I do think there is cause for celebration. To put it contrapositively, I think if there was a failure to adopt it, it would be a disaster. I will start with a statement which I solicited from Anu Bradford, who spoke to us very recently about her recent book, The Digital Empires and the Global Race for Regulation. I will read this, and that's the only thing I will actually read as a text tonight. The AI Act is a landmark legislative achievement that will have a significant impact on the development of AI. The EU defied the often voiced arguments that AI cannot be legislated or that it is too early to intervene given the fast evolving nature of this technology. The passing of the AI Act adds to the growing momentum across jurisdictions to regulate AI. It sets a powerful example that AI can be regulated and provides a template on how to do that. Many governments are taking note and will be likely emulating several aspects of the law, even if they do not copy every provision. We may also observe a Brussels effect, as several AI developers are likely to conform to the AI Act also outside the EU. After all, they may not want to train different models for each individual market in which they operate. Hannes asked me to talk about the political background, and this, since I always do what he tells me, this is what I will start with. Moshe Vardi likes to say that it's all about power. Well, this was a power play par excellence, because the fact that the AI Act was adopted was carried out in the face of fierce lobbying. In addition to the lobbying budgets that big tech used, which are all, by the way, available to the EU Transparency Register, which are only the self-declared budgets, they exceed anything that big pharma, big oil, or big finance has ever used. And in addition, the big tech has created a web of helpers. These helpers include academic faculties, for example, competition economics people, think tanks, NGOs, SMEs, SME organizations, startup organizations, and legal and economic consultancies. Just to give you an example, Amazon is the smallest spender. Well, the others are much bigger spenders. It looks like a web, and again, the source is the EU Transparency Register, November 2023. There are all kinds of organizations which then help in the lobbying, and you will see that and try to describe how the lobbying takes place, because we'll see that ahead of us on the road. In addition to let's say, the straight lobbying by the companies themselves, they also have access to power. High-level meetings with European Commission officials and heads of state on the AI Act. Just as an example, Google's Sundar Pichai, he shuttled to Brussels and managed to meet with 3 commissioners on the same day. Those of you that know how difficult it is to meet with commissioners can be appropriately impressed or depressed by that. when it became clear that beyond a certain point, the European Commission and the European Parliament, once they had gone over their internal discussions that Kai described earlier, that they would not budge further, then the lobbying moved to the member states. And that's something else to keep in mind for the future, because the Council, the member states, remains the black box of EU policy making. It's the least transparent of the EU institutions as far as lobbying is concerned, because it's very difficult to know. There's no, let's say, European-wide transparency register for the lobbying that takes place in the member states. And this time there was lobbying not just by the, say, usual suspects, the US big tech, but also by European companies. And just two case studies, Mistral from France. Mistral opened a lobbying office in Brussels, headed by Cedric O. That's his whole last name. It's a single letter. Cedric O. He was a former Secretary of State for Digital Affairs in France. He initiated an open letter signed by 150 European companies saying that the AI Act would jeopardize EU's competitiveness and technological sovereignty. This statement was echoed by the responsible French minister. Aleph Alpha, another case study, made a similar statement, which was echoed by Minister Habeck in this particular case. The narrative in this lobbying changed. The old narrative of regulation stifles innovation is gone, probably irreversibly. The new narrative and strategy is that big tech is irreplaceable when it comes to solving problems. What are the problems? The problems are more advanced AI, also containing the risks of AI. All of these problems can be solved only by big tech. The second line of argument in the narrative is that we're just defending SMEs and consumers. And in promoting this argument, there was support by SME associations and consumer associations affiliated with the big tech companies. And of course, the third that we know well, the fear of China, you regulate us and China will dominate, foregoing the fact that, as Joseph Sifaki spoke to us recently, the Chinese companies are very heavily regulated, differently and for different reasons, but very heavily regulated. And the strategy of the lobbying was that big tech publicly supports new rules, so they're for regulation, but effectively only self-regulation. That's the line now. In terms of attempts, the first attempt is to try and block any regulation with enforcing power, and the AI Act has, in theory, enforcing power. We'll see if that happens in practice. And then if that fails, try to water down any concrete regulation and its implementation. And this is still ahead of us. Kai mentioned the stages that will follow. It's not over yet. The AI timetable. The final consolidated text will come out sometime in February, as Kai told us. It will be published in the official journal sometime in April and enter into force after 21 days. But then, given the other steps to follow, we're looking at 2026. Why is that important? Because between now and 2026, a lot of water will have flown under the proverbial bridge. Technology will have changed. And this is something that I will come to at the end. when I say a few things about what digital humanism and like-minded organizations could do. In the meantime, sometime circa 2025, we'll have the so-called harmonized standards. Not all standards in the European Union are harmonized, are called harmonized, but only those intended to support specific EU legislation, like the AI Act in this case. These harmonized standards are supposed to take us from vague statements to concrete ones. For example, a statement like suitable risk management measures have to be translated into technical statements that are checkable. And as was told was just before, the European standards organizations are involving also national standard bodies and stakeholder organizations. There's a lot that can flow under the bridge during this standard definition. So, given all this, how can digital humanism and like-minded organizations help? What can we do? What should we do? The first thing is to monitor the AI Act progress in parallel with technology developments and flag problems as they arise. There could well be a technology development that turns something upside down. An organization like Digital Humanism is well placed to flag something like that, identify it, and then see how to communicate it properly. From the consolidated document that will appear in February, which I don't believe will contain any surprises, to the definition of standards, which is a different story, and to the final, let's say, voting, where countries, for example, France and Germany, will have to vote, the AI Act remains a moving target. In addition, digital humanism, together with like-minded organizations, should be ready to identify and address implementation problems. What are anticipated implementation problems? Well, a new office will be created by the European Commission called the AI Office that will hire people, mostly young, bright, I hope, lawyers, for example, that will be able to deal with infractions and act accordingly. The big tech companies already have in their hire some of the most powerful legal houses in the US and Europe. So how the new commission hires will be able to match the battle-hardened legal experts of the big companies is a potential implementation problem. To have any effect of that, we should coordinate with like-minded organizations. This we have discussed before, and efforts have started to that effect. In addition, digital humanism could and should contribute to leveraging the Brussels effect that Anu Bradford mentioned in her message to us. Already, there are first contacts by the European Commission with Canada, South Korea, Philippines, India, Taiwan, and other countries. We and like-minded organizations can help with contacts in these countries to have parts of the AI Act adopted there. I didn't mention China because, again, as Joseph Sifakis mentioned to us, we're talking there about a self-contained ecosystem, which at the time would not be interested to discuss the AI Act or anything like it. In addition, California and about 20 additional states in the United States have already been looking at the AI Act for some time and would be ready interlocutors to its adoption. So the final message is let's keep open the public statement that we started with an addendum referring to what I just described, and keep the effort going, because this time, although some people in Brussels were saying that these companies are becoming too powerful to regulate, this didn't turn out to be true. The regulation was adopted. But will that be the case next time? This is something to ponder about. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Can you not share your slides anymore? Can you close your slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we are now to the Q&A part. I think we have, in principle, we have three parts. One is more the technical level, what's in the act. The second one is on the political level, where we could wonder how it was successful given all this, let's say, lobbying power. And the third topic is how to proceed from the moment we are now in the and Moshe, it's you, and then it's Giuseppe.
So thank you both for this enlightening presentation. And my question is, what have we learned? So let's suppose we are, I don't know, 2 years ago, and knowing what we had some foresight and clairvoyance, what should have been done differently?
Okay, this is a question to both of you, to Kai and to George, and maybe to all the others in the Zoom session. Maybe Kai, you can start, and then George, you please short, because we have so many can speak. Kai.
Yes. So two things. First of all, I think in the European Parliament, as it was being reported in the press and Politico and Euractiv, there were a lot of internal problems among the political groups, among co-rapporteurs and so on. I think in the end, we all wanted very similar things, and therefore, if we could go back 2 years in time, I would hope that we don't repeat the same mistakes that we produced, because it was really not always the best example of cooperation. All sides now included in this kind of criticism. And as a second point, as my co-panelist was pointing out, the council is black box. And I think for most people in Brussels, it was coming really as a surprise how strong the opposition towards regulating foundation model was in the end, because we had a kind of deal on the table. We had a very good proposal by the European Commission, by the Parliament and the Council that the Spanish presidency and myself were writing. And then suddenly the French government, the German government said, no, we will vote against the AI Act if this is passing. And they didn't say it in this intensity ever before. So Italy didn't say anything, but the French and to some extent the German were not super happy with regulating foundation models, but they never said before that they would, if it's coming in, even block the whole AI Act. And if we would have known that, we would really have prepared better and would have invested much more time and so on. So in the end, again, it was for everyone surprising what Mistral and Aleph Alpha did there over the summer break. And they did it really, let's say, under the radar of most people. I heard rumors that the French government is becoming more and more critical, but again, no one in Brussels really understood until end of October that the opposition. So those 2 points I would underline.
George, you have some comment to the question of Moshe, or can we move?
I do. I will answer a part of Moshe's question, which is what we as Digital Humanism could have done. And the answer is we could have gotten involved earlier, and we should take this to heed now. We could have gotten involved a couple of years ago when some of these things were shaping up, I think this would be a lesson that from now on, we should follow these developments and intervene together with like-minded organizations. There were over 100 open letters like ours sent. And they had an effect. Believe me, they had an effect. No, you cannot measure these things. But so let's get involved earlier this time.
Cristiano?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, one observation is that before ChatGPT had this incredible success, the AI Act was almost completed. So I wonder when all the water will go under the bridge, and what will happen in 2026 if something has changed. But my main question, probably more to Kai, but also to George, more concretely, what is unsatisfactory about foundation model? You know, apart from the fact that I understood that it's a vague statement, but more concretely, what would have the Parliament liked to have in the final version?
Kai,
Yeah,
but
good
please
question.
short. I ask you to keep your questions and your answers short now, because I see many raising their hand, and we want to have some more questions and some more answers. Kai.
Yes. So as I said already, the procedure at the moment is Article A in this chapter on foundation models, GPI models. I think this will be attacked by US big tech because the enough, and they are always looking for loopholes in order to go in front of the court. Secondly, also the obligations, I think, are not clear enough. And for me, also the threshold of 10 to 25 LOPs is too high. I would have like at least a threshold of, or at maximum a threshold of 10 to 24, plus that model evaluation is not there for the lower tier. I also, at least some kind of model evaluation, I would have liked to see for all models. And another last critical point from my side is the open source exemption, which I like very, very much in general when it comes to the AI Act. Doesn't really make sense in my opinion, and I'm backed by the open source community when it comes to technical documentation, because the open source community is doing with model cards and so on. So by now putting an open source exemption in the fee when it comes to the technical documentation, we are kind of promoting non-transparent activities in the open source community against their own best practices. And this for me doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, Kai. The next one is Julian Kalitschke. Can you unmute and also show your face a little bit, please?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentations. Unfortunately, I can't manage to get my camera working at this moment. I'm very sorry.
You need some AI.
Perhaps. Yes, I just wanted to have a really quick question, and I'm not super proficient with the legislation, so maybe this seems naive, but how do you compare the dynamics and specifically the legality of complaints by individuals between the GDPR and the AI Act? Because we see a lot of dynamics coming from private or at least non-governmental entities for the GDPR in terms of enforcement. Will we also see this for the AI Act?
Who of you?
I can say a quick word on that. I mean, there's a big difference in the enforcement. The big difference is that this will be enforced centrally. The GDPR is enforced by the member states. This will be enforced centrally. How well it will be enforced, we'll have to see. because we live in an imperfect world. Regulation is part of this world, so it's imperfect. There are windows. There are windows for national security applications. There are windows for national security contractors. You know, these windows should be kept as windows and not garage doors that you can drive a truck through. But all that will be seen in the implementation.
Maybe just very shortly from my side, what is quite interesting is the right for an explanation in Article 68C, which is going beyond what is now in the GDPR. And this could actually, from a civil society perspective, really make because, for example, if you are getting a rejection in front of the from a university, if you are applying for a master program in the future, you could ask, why did I get the rejection? Is, for example, the data set biased and there's a violation against Article 10? Again, if this is, as George was saying, if this is properly enforced, this could really make a difference. And just one comment, well, it's not completely centralized because the complaints would tabled in front of the national competent authorities, and the European Commission can just coordinate, or if there is, let's say, a case with union effect, then the Commission can take over. So there are different steps.
Okay, Giuseppe.
Yes, I was really surprised to hear George saying that this will be centralized. That's not at all. There will be national authorities in each nation that will undertake the certification. The certification has to be done on each and different nation according to each different regulation, and each country will have its own rules. And
Giuseppe, can you put it a little bit louder because we can't hear you?
I'm saying that I'm surprised to hear from George that this regulation will be acted upon centrally, because that's not true. There will be national regulation, national authorities in each country, and each one will act accordingly to its own laws. And the reason for the European AI Act was just exactly to coordinate all those different national authorities. And who never knows whether they will be able to do so. But except from that, my question was that I'm really puzzled about some aspects of the regulation which I still don't understand. So, for example, one aim of the regulation is to certify. I mean, the certain aspects of the applications, right? Before they are allowed to get into the public operation. But in order to do that, they also want to preserve the digital, the intellectual property rights of the companies. So they cannot do the certification by looking into the software. So the only way out of this is that to do auto certification, basically just the companies themselves certify that their own products behave according to certain rules. But now what are these rules? Nobody knows. So, and George talks about standards, but what standards? There are no standards about an application, a general purpose technology like AI that can be applied to anything. There cannot be any single standard, or you can put the standards on electrical plugs, right? Because it's a single specific item or device. But you are talking about millions of different devices. There are no standards that would apply to all those devices. And then there are final things that I still don't understand, because since the certification would be so complicated to do that SMEs will not be able to do so, then the same regulations say, well, it's complicated, so we will set up regulatory sandboxes to help SMEs to perform this experimentation and certification. So what are these regulatory sandboxes? How much do they cost? I heard that's the
Giuseppe, sorry for interrupting you.
Yes.
I think we understood the question. Can I forward the question to both of the speakers, because I try really to keep the questions and the answers short.
So yes.
data questions.
Please tell us what these regulation sandboxes are, and how much they will cost.
So both of you are, maybe you can divide the questions among.
I can take a first go, and then Kai can complete. Yes, it's not completely centralized, but it is much more centralized than GDPR. That's an essential difference, and that should not be underestimated, because in what is ahead of us, it will be the AI office of the European Commission that will have to deal with some of the problems raised, and I'm sure they will be raised by many of the big companies. Concerning of the cost of sandboxes, I don't think anybody has a precise estimate of that. But the standard setting, I mean, this is true for any regulation, and there certainly will be areas where it will be very difficult to do. The result being, for example, of having the category of unacceptable risk and the category of high risk in practice collapsing to a single category for a while at least. But this is not. I don't think this is a negative aspect for the AI Act. This will have to be developed. The standards. It's not a one-off thing. The Commission can and will. I can tell you probably when this will happen, but even after 2026, come back and request a new standard setting by the pertinent bodies.
Kai?
Well,
Yes,
just one
exactly.
second. You don't know the cost of.
Sorry, Kai.
You know the cost of the regulated sandboxes, but Thierry Breton knows, because he offered 200 million euros to one country, which I will mention, to experiment with one of them. So it will cost 200 millions for 27 sandboxes. It will be more than 5.7 billions of euros. So it will cost more to run the sandboxes than to invest than what the European Union invests in research in AI for the next 10 or 20 years.
Giuseppe, I have a question. If you know the answer to your question, why do you ask? Sorry, Kai, it's your turn now.
Yes. So quickly on sanitization, yes. So basically, what the Commission will exactly do, issue already now a new sanitization request on, I think, sustainability and AI, and on foundation models to send Senelec, or at least very soon. And indeed, they can do it also in 1 year and 2 years if there is something new happening, and this seems to be necessary. And because it was asked before, the Commission also has, on a lot of points in the AI Act, the possibility to issue delegated acts to make changes, for example, on Annex 3 on the list of high-risk AI use cases. If, for example, there's a new AI technology that seems to be rather risky. This is something that we in the European Parliament found always quite well, cross-party speaking, because it really allows the AI Act to be more future-proof. When it comes to the cost of regulatory sandboxes, well, they are based on input from the European Parliament, which we made minor checks. We gave all member states kind of minimum criteria that every member state needs to apply to and needs to implement, even though they have still a lot of freedom in how to design the regulatory sandbox, how much money to invest, blah, 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 blah. But one of those points is that there should be free access, or at least heavily reduced costs for SMEs and startups if they want to join a regulatory sandbox. How those regulatory sandbox in the end, no one knows. The first example in Spain looks promising to some extent, but again, this is something we will only see in 2-3 years if this is really workable on AI. One concern that I do share with the criticism that has been raised is indeed that the AI Act will heavily rely on certification. And one thing that probably we all do not want to see is that small SMEs in the end need to go to KPMG, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, and so on, and all buy their kind of AI Act compliant certificates because they cannot do it themselves. This is something hopefully indeed the regulatory sandboxes and also other mechanisms like the AI trust label developed by VDI in Germany can mitigate or can address.
Okay, there's one last question from the chat. It's from Clara Bonzi. I take it as the last question. She's asking, is the AI Act providing any legal basis for explainable AI? Is there any legal basis for this explanation? Let's say I understand this explainable AI explaining the outcome.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in there. As I said already, there is now for the end user or for the affected person the chance to issue a request for a certain output of an AI system. So you can ask again the university why your request to admission to a master study was rejected. Also, we have explainability as a concept in Article 13 in transparency in the instruction to use as a general principle for AI in the ethical guidelines of the high-level expert group, which is part of Article 69, and also in a lot of other parts of the AI Act, but often as a rather side element, let's say, because we did agree on political level that full explainability is not possible with machine learning, deep learning systems, at least right now. Maybe this is something that in the future will be possible, but right now this will be something that companies could not comply with, which is why we do not have explainability responsibility in the AI Act, for example, for high-risk AI.
No, that is.
Thanks, Kai, and thanks also, George. I think the time is somehow over. We have to pass over to the music piece. But before doing that, I would like to make a remark to Moshe's question. What can we learn? And one thing we can learn is that engagement by civil society helps. Also engagement by academics. So if you look at the power play, which was done from the lobbying side, it's really impressive that the AI Act passed. And I think this is one message which also is supportive to our Digital Humanism initiative. And the point is taken, George brought forward, that we should keep open the statement. We will do that on our website. And there is already underway the plan for organizing a big event in fall this year, together with other organizations, with the topic on AI regulation and the European AI Act, with several other organizations. This can be hosted here in Vienna, and I think this should be a big event where we also have possible cooperations with the Commission and things like that to really watch what's going on. And this is also some, let's say, mission for digital humanism for next year. Having said this, I thank you for participating in the discussion. I especially thank the two panelists. I also want this time also thank Walter Palmetzhofer, who at the back does a lot for making this lecture series possible, because that we can meet here in the open digital room is his work, and he's supporting us. Thank you, Walter, for that. And now I'm passing over to Erich, who is introducing the piece, explaining the piece of music, and ending our session for this year. And I think digital humanism had a good year, and I wish you also all the best. Thanks. Erich, the floor is yours.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much. Let me just do one more thing here. There is another Christmas present if you're looking for last-minute presents coming up, and that is a new book by our group. It's the Introduction to Digital Humanism. This is going to be a textbook. It's going to appear in hardcover by January, mid-January. We expect to get the copies from Springer, but it should be available online and open access just in time before Christmas, just in case you're bored over Christmas. This is what you can do. You can browse through the Introduction to Digital Humanism and read on various topics that we have covered throughout the year and last year, in fact. So that's about the book. And about the music, this time is a bit different because there was a little bit of a disagreement about the piece. And so we took a management decision. And it's going to be something European, we thought. Some of you may know it. It's a song by Toto Cotugno, Insieme 1992, which is the original title. It won the Eurovision Song Contest in I think in 1990. In a country that no longer exists, in Zagreb, in Yugoslavia. And yes, I think it's quite a proper thing to do, A, at the end of the year, B, maybe in these days, and C, certainly with a forthcoming AI Act. And I just quote from the lyrics, "Europe is not far away. This is an Italian song for you. Together, unite, unite Europe." Thank you very much, and see you next year.
Insieme, unite, unite Europe. Con te, così lontano e diverso. Con te, amico che credevo perso. Io e te, sotto lo stesso sogno, insieme, unite, unite Europe. E per te, donna senza frontiere, per te, sotto le stesse bandiere, io e te, sotto lo stesso cielo, insieme, unite, unite Europe, sempre più liberi noi, non è più un sogno e noi non siamo più soli, sempre più uniti noi, dammi una mano e vedrai che voli, l'Europa non è lontana, c'è una canzone italiana per voi, insieme, unite, unite Europe. Sempre più liberi noi, le nostre stelle una bandiera sola, sempre più forti noi, dammi una mano e vedrai se vola, l'Europa non è lontana, c'è una canzone italiana per voi. Insieme, unite, unite Europe. L'Europa non è lontana,
Helga, this was also for the Italians among us. Goodbye. I wish you all the best.